Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, today we're gonna discuss about mounted orchids. I've been playing with them for about a year and a half or more, and I drew some conclusions. As the title suggests, I will be giving them up, so I'll tell you my reasons, tell you some observations, maybe they will help you decide whether this is for you or not. Okay, let me just start off by saying that all epiphyte orchids theoretically can be grown mounted because they do enjoy the air, they don't need constant sogginess and soil around their roots. However, it all relates to your lifestyle, your possibilities, and your environment, whether this type of growth is suited for you and it's gonna help your orchids flourish or not. As suspected, with this amount of air around the roots at all times, you will have to adjust your watering. Usually mounted orchids do require watering once a day at least, or multiple times a day, depending on your environment and how fast water dries. Now, this is the major problem with mounted orchids. Of course, you can improvise a little wall like this and grow your orchids in a home like this. You don't necessarily need a greenhouse, but when it comes to watering, it will really require you to pay attention and to not let your orchids without water for a day or more. Even the most drought-tolerant orchids, like I have the Brassivola here, can struggle if you miss on a watering day. And I'll show you what can happen. The root tips can absolutely stop growing out of the blue, and this is just a sign of lack of watering, lack of moisture and hydration. Not to mention that leaves can get lumpy or wrinkly and all sorts of nice things that happen when an orchid is dehydrated. So the first thing you need to address is your availability to actually water, how much time you have. Another thing to consider is regarding your environment as well. You might actually need to soak the mounds, not just give a flash of water or stuff like that, because if you just spray them a little bit, they will be dry within half an hour, and it's not really what you're looking for. Your roots need to stay wet for more than that for an orchid to properly absorb water. I don't know if you notice, whenever you have a shriveled pseudobulb, it takes an entire day to actually plump back up. That entire day means that the roots were picking up water for 24 hours to plump that pseudobulb. So just because you spray it for half an hour and it stays moist for half an hour, it does not mean it's properly hydrated. And this is something that I just discovered with most of my mounted orchids. It's not enough to spray them, particularly in my summertime when it's kind of dry and kind of hot. So you need to consider how you're gonna water them, because spraying might not be enough. You will need to soak them in a bucket. If you're ready to do that, then all is fine, but if you're not, you might have some trouble. So it really depends on you if you want to invest the time or it's relaxing for you and you have the time to water them properly, then you should be fine from this regard. But I think this is the major drawback of actually keeping orchids mounted in a home. Now, imagining you have a greenhouse which has higher humidity, you can regulate the humidity, this will not be an issue. Obviously, if you can hose them down, things are even better. So mounted orchids really do better, much better in a greenhouse, in my opinion. Our homes are just not suited for this type of growth, and the worst thing is that everything will reflect on the well-being of our orchids. The fact that we cannot water them properly and keep them hydrated properly will only mean that the orchid will suffer, even though this type of growth is totally not wrong in any way. It's quite airy, so it will keep you safe from root rot. However, it will not keep you safe from desiccated roots, and that's just as bad in my opinion. Another thing to consider is the type of mount you will be using to aid you in this process. If you're gonna use cork bark like the orchid that I just showed you, cork bark really does not retain any water, or if it does, it will just keep a minimal amount, and yeah, that will not help you in the process. However, clay mounts do seem to stay drier for longer periods of time. They also stay a little bit more cool, so that can help you if you have a hot environment. However, this is not enough, in my opinion, and in some climates, like my summertime, even a clay mount will need to be watered once a day, and with clay you do need to soak it because clay absorbs water. This is why it stays moist for longer periods of time. So with this type of mount, I think you kind of need to soak it to get the full benefit of the clay. Other than that, it does have the benefit that it will not decompose, it will not degrade like other types of wood, so that's good and that's encouraging. However, it's still not the perfect solution, let's say in a home environment, if you just don't have time or if you don't feel like watering or soaking orchids every day. There are also orchids which do prefer to stay more moist, and I have here the Bulbophyllum barbigerum. You didn't see this guy for a long time. He's really not doing much. He created roots, but the roots simply refuse to grow more and attach themselves to the bark. Even if I added sphagnum moss right here, it's just not to his liking. He would really prefer more humidity. I do have another Bulbophyllum that is in a basket with media, and that one is doing beautifully compared to this one, even though in theory this should do really great on a mount. However, just because this type of growth does not have synergy with me, it will reflect on the orchid. So keep in mind the type of orchid you have, because this is important. Camellia orchids might do a little bit better. Bulbophyllums and other orchids that do require high humidity or high moisture will not necessarily do as great no matter how you mount them. Also, you might say, well, I'm gonna add some sphagnum moss. This stuff dries fast as well. Yes, it will retain some water, but not as much as you might think. And this is a bit of a letdown for me. I thought if I added sphagnum moss, everything should be fine, but it's not. It really dries fast. There's just too much air and sometimes too much heat and stuff like that. And leaving all those aspects aside, of course they're gonna drip. So when you're gonna water them, I'll tell you from my own experience, I usually take them all to the bathroom because I started to drip water on my carpet here, and at some point it was not okay. So I don't need to go into details. So they will drip. If you're gonna water them, you might have to go to the bathroom, put them somewhere to just let them drip a little more, and then bring them to your house or your growing space. Of course, if you have a designated room without rugs and stuff like that, it's not going to be a problem, but I'm just telling you my trouble. If somehow you do have an arrangement in your home and you have carpets on the floor and so on. So again, it will add time to the watering time that you already have to perform every single day. And that can really take from the hobby. You'll spend more time worrying about dripping, about watering every day, about soaking, about the water you use and stuff like that, than actually enjoying the orchids. And if somehow you're not happy with the way you grow them and you just don't have time to properly grow them like this, you're gonna see it on your orchid. After a year and a half, I can tell you, they're not doing spectacular mounted, my orchids. And it's simply because it just does not work with me and my lifestyle, and that is that. Now let's address a little the water cylinder or cool log if you're in the USA. Now on paper, this stuff should be a lifesaver. I can tell you it's really not, at least in my environment, which can be quite cold in the winter and kind of hot in the summertime. So this stuff really accumulates algae, but you know, the algae does not bother me all that much, but mold, a lot of mold, and I can see this in the roots. Also, the roots don't seem to be extremely happy. You can see my Aranges really didn't fully attach. She is attached from place to place, but I just had to tie the roots. She didn't really want to attach with the new roots. And the attachment is just really fragile. And of course you can see the root tips just stopped growing because of the mold and so on. So with the cool log and with the cylinder, I know there's a hype about it, but better try out with one first, at least for 6 months, and see how it does in your environment. Because really some stuff just look good on paper, but when you actually try them, they really might not work out all that great. So for me, the water cylinder is a major letdown. This orchid doesn't seem to be extremely happy in it either, so I'm gonna switch it to a basket or something else. This really doesn't work all that great, as it theoretically should. Luckily, there is a sort of a middle ground between mounting orchids and keeping them in a sort of a media, and this is baskets. And I find baskets really good because you can actually place whatever media you find best in your environment and for your orchids in this basket. It is quite ventilated, so you don't have to worry about keeping your orchids way too soggy and non-ventilated. And of course, you can hang the baskets, so if you don't have space on your desk or shelf, of course you can hang these guys as well. Now there are some orchids which do seem to climb up. You might know the brassias and stuff like that, and collagenys sometimes. Now there's an easy fix with these ones as well, and I have some ideas. I will put them in practice when I move out, so soon enough I'm gonna try out something that will be a sort of a hybrid between a mounted type of growth and a basket type of growth, which in my opinion and on paper looks good. But yeah, definitely for those orchids which do benefit from mounting simply because of their way of growth, there is also an easier solution if you just don't have time to water way that often. We'll talk about it more in a month and a half or so though. And a last idea, I know there are those orchid growers who are just very keen on mounting. They really don't accept the idea of pots. And I can totally understand that. Astrid said something really pretty at some point, or actually really funny. All of us have our own inner snob when it comes to orchids. I have it as well. I don't like phalaenopsis. Some people don't like pots or keeping orchids in pots. That's okay if you have a little snob, but you do kind of have to face the truth. In a home environment, there's really nothing wrong with growing orchids potted. Orchids do not see what they're potted in. They can only feel it. So if you get the balance between moisture and air, and also you have the right size of a pot for the roots to actually attach, because that's why we don't overpot orchids. They just like to attach to stuff. So if you have all of these things working properly for you, there's no danger in actually keeping orchids in a pot. And if it's just easier for you, it will reflect on your orchid as well and its well-being. And pretty much that's the goal. Keeping the orchids healthy, hydrated, ventilated, all at the same time. And if mounting is just not doing it for you, it's totally fine. You don't have to mount your orchids. They don't care. Just be sure that the air balance and the moisture balance is okay and you're good to go, really, and just ignore whatever people say. It's their own inner snob. We all have them. It's okay. It's perfectly normal, but some people just don't want to face the truth. So alrighty, these were my thoughts on mounting orchids. I'll never mount orchids again. It's just too time consuming for the type of growth, the type of conditions, environment, and so on that I grow my orchids in. However, I'll try to make a hybrid between a sort of a mounted style and a potted style, and hopefully it will help you out if you're in the same situation as me. It will take a while, but do stay tuned for that video if you're interested in this. Alrighty, thank you for watching, guys. I hope you found this useful. If you want to see more orchid videos from me, simply subscribe to my channel. I post on a regular basis. We're also going to be doing a move very soon, and that's exciting. If you want to watch the process, just subscribe and you'll be notified. Also, you can leave me comments, suggestions, or questions you might have regarding orchids in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you. If you click on the left side of your screen, you'll be directed to orchidnature.com, where you'll find care sheets, identification sheets, and also you can talk to us in the forum section. And on the right side of your screen, you can click to watch another orchid video. Thank you for joining. I'll see you next time. Bye!